As a person of color, it can be really hard to find mental health resources that are reflective of your experience. Moreover, a lot of the times we don't even know where to start. I know for myself, I was always scared about the stigma surrounding mental health. There's so much stigma in society that people who were struggling with their mental health were weak or that there was something wrong with them. And that transferred into a lot of personal stigma for myself. I bottled it all up and I had no idea what to do with that. As well, in my culture, there was just no words for mental health or how to talk about it. All of this combined together made me want to just sit back and wait. But I knew I needed to do something about it. There can be a lot of different barriers to seeking help. I know for myself, one of the biggest ones was that I felt there was no one out there who understood my experience. As a person of color, everywhere I looked, I saw a lot of white therapists, I saw a lot of westernized concepts, and for me, it just didn't feel like I'd be welcome or feel safe in that space. It was really discouraging. Cost is another very big barrier. It seems like a lot of the mental health resources out there are pretty expensive, and as a young person, we may not have as much disposable income, so that can deter us from reaching out for help. Where we live can also play a big part into our mental health journeys. If we're in rural areas or outside of city centers, oftentimes there aren't as many things that are accessible to us, and that can play a big part in reaching out for help. Oftentimes, as people of color, we may feel confined to westernized concepts of care or what we see on social media. That's not the case. There's so much out there that we can explore, and just because one thing didn't work for you doesn't mean you should give up. There's so many other places you can try. Understanding where to start and what resources to seek out can be difficult. So we're here to tell you a little bit more about them. Self-care is an important part of everyday mental health maintenance. You don't need to be struggling or stressed out to engage in self-care. You can do it whenever you like. Honestly, I recommend doing a little bit every single day. My thoughts on self-care really changed when I started looking at it through the 7 pillars of self-care. Number 1 is knowledge and health literacy. The more you know about how you feel, the more you can understand it. It makes a huge difference. It makes everything a little bit easier to tackle. Knowledge really is power. The second pillar of self-care is mental well-being. This is making sure that we check in with ourselves and our minds to see how we're feeling. When we know how we feel, we can do something about it. If we're not feeling the greatest, refer back to that mental health spectrum and see what type of resources you need to help yourself get back to a healthy level. The third pillar of self-care is physical activity. Our minds and our bodies are connected, so it's important that we're taking care of both of them. A little bit of exercise or even going on like a 15-20 minute walk every single day really makes a difference for our minds as well. The fourth pillar of self-care is healthy eating. What we put into our bodies and what fuel we give it makes a difference on how our mind and our body feels. Everything is connected. The fifth pillar of self-care is risk avoidance. I know it sounds straightforward and obvious. Of course you want to avoid risks, but sometimes it comes into play more than we think. Some ways we can avoid risk is minimizing our usage of alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, and other recreational drugs. Although these might give us temporary fixes or it feels like it's helping our mental health, it's really masking the problem. The sixth pillar of self-care is good hygiene. I know for myself when I was struggling, sometimes the hardest thing to do was get out of bed. It makes such a difference if you just take a shower, if you brush your teeth. I know it sounds like obvious things that are integrated into our everyday life, and it sounds silly, but just motivating myself enough to get out of bed and get into the shower made a huge difference. The final pillar of self-care is rational use of products and services. I know for myself, this is one that I struggle with. There's a really thin line between self-care and self-sabotage. For myself, sometimes this looks like going on Instagram just to see some pictures of dogs to make myself happy and uplift my mood. And suddenly 2 or 3 hours have passed by, I've been on endless scrolling, and I have no idea what I was supposed to be doing that day. The best thing you can do for yourself is be mindful of your time. We've all got 24 hours in a day. Make sure you're doing things in a timely manner. Keeping all of those different pillars of self-care in mind, we can engage in different self-care activities. This is going to look different from person to person and even as an individual. What you need today may not be the thing you need tomorrow, and that's okay. Some examples of self-care activities can include journaling. It could be going out for a walk, maybe having your favorite food just to have a little bit of comfort. I know one of my self-care activities is putting on Harry Potter and just watching it for the night. Something to make me feel comfortable, safe, and happy. Therapy is probably one of the most widely known resources for those who are struggling with their mental health. There's actually many different types of therapy, and as you look into them, you can see what's more relevant to what you're experiencing. It's important to recognize that you're also paying for this service. So if you don't get along with a therapist or you feel like it's not a fit for you, it's okay. You can always try someone new. It's important that you ask your therapist questions too. One of the best things you can do for yourself is ask for a consultation before you commit to a service with them. This gives you a chance to ask them whatever's on your mind, learn more about the methods that they use, and you can see if they have a background in working with people of color. As a person of color, I found it really hard to find a therapist that actually connected to me and understood the experiences that I've had. I know the first therapist I went to was an older white male, and when I told him that I was having boyfriend issues, he told me to go tell my mom, who had no idea I even had a boyfriend. It was really frustrating, and I left there feeling worse than when I had walked in. What I learned through that experience is that not every therapist is going to be the therapist for me. As a person of color, I found that I connected better with therapists that were also people of color or had grown up in homes with immigrant parents. All of these small nuances actually made therapy a better experience for me. It took a little bit of trial and error, but it was definitely worth it. Once you find the right therapist for yourself, it doesn't just stop there. You have to actually do the work. I know that sounds easy and simple, but there's a lot that goes into it. One, that starts off with being truthful. I know it can be really uncomfortable to talk about some of the things that you've been through, and it may feel like that the person on the other side is judging you, but it's actually just their job to listen and help you. It's okay to talk about anything that's on your mind. As well, another important part of therapy is aftercare. I don't think we talk about this enough. Going to therapy is not a fun, pleasant feeling. Sometimes you'll leave there and you'll feel really heavy. You'll feel like you've just talked about so much, and it can bring up a lot of different feelings that have triggered you in the past. One of the best things you can do for yourself is after a therapy session, stay hydrated, be gentle with your body, and engage in a self-care activity that makes you feel better. That could be something as quick as a walk in nature or just lying down and going to sleep for an extra couple hours. The community around us can also be a really great resource for our mental health. I know for myself, being more connected to my community helped me find a sense of belonging and gave me a support system that I didn't have before. It's okay to ask for help, but before that, you have to be willing to accept help. I know that's something I struggled with. I had a lot of really great friends and family members who wanted to help me and would check in with me all the time, but I just wasn't ready for that. Know that the people around you love you and they want to support you. Let them. Another great resource for your mental health can be your family doctor. If you don't know where to start or where to go, they're the best person to come to. They can help connect you with other resources, they can prescribe you medication, or put you in touch with a referral for a therapist or a psychiatrist. I know medication can sound really scary, but think about it as a partnership between yourself and your doctor. It does take a little bit of trial and error, so you have to make sure that you're honest with your doctor, especially if you're not feeling well. I know for myself, the first medication I tried didn't work. I just felt like something was wrong still. And so I told my doctor and we tried a new one, and I did so much better on that one. Once I found a medication that worked for me, it made a huge difference. Our mental health struggles don't have a schedule. We may never know when it's going to show up. It doesn't have to be between 9 to 5 when a lot of the resources are open. And because of that, it's important to have some emergency resources in your back pocket. Some of the best ones that I found have been phone lines. There's a lot available around the world, but one of my favorite ones is Kids Help Phone or Crisis Text Line. If you're in a moment where you feel like you're having an emergency or in a crisis, be sure to reach out to the emergency resources near you. Here's a list of some of the ones available. As I was going through my healing journey, I learned a lot along the way. Here's some things that I wish people had told me when I was younger. First of all, your mental health journey is going to be a lot of trial and error. Some things may work and some things might not, and that's okay. The biggest thing is to not get discouraged. You are not beyond help. There are resources out there that will work for you. You just have to try and find them. And like we talked about before, if you're not feeling right in the space you're in, it's okay to find a new one. Everyone's mental health journeys are going to look different. We're unique individuals with unique experiences, so naturally we'll need a unique mental health plan for care. What works for one person may not work for the other, and that's completely okay. Someone might need a mix of self-care and medication. Another person might need therapy. Another person might need all three. Do what works for you. Don't worry about everyone else. I think the biggest and most important lesson I learned throughout my mental health journey was not to stop just because I was feeling better. It's a trap. Oftentimes we feel like because we're feeling better, we're magically cured and everything is fine. But that's really where the best work begins. Recognize that working on our mental health and healing is a lifelong journey. We can change the frequency that we're doing things, we can change what we're doing, but it's important that we're constantly engaging in taking care of our mental health. As we get older and as we change, our mental health journeys are going to change as well. What worked for us when we were younger may not necessarily work for us as we get older. It's okay to use different resources. It's okay to change the plan. Be gentle with yourself. I think the biggest lesson you can take away from your mental health journey is that it does get better. Like I said, it's on a spectrum. We're all going to have good days and bad days. Just know that the good days are always coming back.